Awesome. Very cool. All right, well, as it is the top of the hour, I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we are going to go ahead and get started tonight and get started with our Hour of Code webinar. So this is really going to be about how you can take any Hour of Code activities that you are looking at with doing with your students and use Formative to continue to track those standards with your students and see how they're doing. And also just kind of keep everything in one place for everybody. So that's what we're going to cover tonight. If you'd like to log into your Formative account, you're welcome to. You do not have to, though. You're more than welcome to just follow along on my screen. Little introduction. My name is Katie Rush. I'm a Client Success Manager with Formative. I am a former teacher. I taught 5th grade for about 7 years. I have a general education and a special education background, and in my free time, I like to cook, crochet, and I play on a softball team. We are recording this session tonight, so please feel free to check out our training center in about, it'll probably be the week after Thanksgiving, so in about 2 weeks, and this session will be uploaded for you there, so you're welcome to go back and check it out at any point in time. We are going to go for about 30 minutes today. So please feel free to drop questions in the chat. I do have it up in front of me. I'm more than welcome to stop, more than happy to stop to talk through any questions you may have or things that you're popping into your brain. Okay. All right, we're going to go over a couple of different things. We're going to look at what is Hour of Code. We're going to kind of talk through the basics of it, how you can really use Formative to enhance your Hour of Code activities and make them guided, strategic, and useful and relevant for your students. We're going to go over where to find some other planning resources on the Hour of Code website. And then you're also going to walk away today with a ready-to-use Formative that is designed around a coding activity I did with my students, but it is very applicable and flexible to be changed for any grade level. So you will get that at the end of this webinar. All right, so what is Hour of Code? Hour of Code is this really cool initiative that is designed around activities that help demystify code to show that anybody can learn the basics. And that's what I got that right off the Hour of Code website. It takes place during Computer Science Education Week, which is December 6th through the 12th this year. So we're getting ahead of the game and helping you all plan for that. And I really want to stress these last 2 points. Even if you are brand new and you know nothing about coding, you can still encourage your students to learn it. You can still plan activities around it for your students. And it's not just for older students, it is for anybody and everybody. All students of all ages can participate. And we're going to kind of talk through how to find those activities today. So without further ado, I am going to have us dive in here. And I'm actually going to start with the Hour of Code website. So I'm going to flip over here really quickly. And all you have to do is Google Hour of Code, and it will come up very quickly for you, hourofcode.com. And then clicking on activities will bring you to this page. This is where I'm pulling a lot of the activities that I'm going to show you in Formative today from. And so you can see, you can sort it by grade level or grade band here. You can also sort it by technology. So depending on what kind of technology you have in your school, you can specify by technology and find activities that you know will work for those devices. So super helpful to keep it simple for you as a teacher planning these activities. You'll also notice there is a no computer or devices option. There are activities that are designed to be unplugged activities. So just because maybe you don't have one-to-one devices at your school, you can still do Hour of Code activities with your students. So I just want to highlight that real quick. But for now, we are going to drop into Formative. And so I've got a Formative built out here with a couple of different activities that I want to talk you through and ways that you can take things from the Hour of Code website and build them into Formative. So to start with, I'm going to be using some premium features and some free features. So if you have a free account, just double check and see what kind of features match up with what you have in your account. There's always workarounds with things, so please feel free to play around if you see something that's not working the way you thought it would. For this particular example, I have this link down here. We're going to start with this activity. So this activity is an AI for Oceans activity that my students can do from the Hour of Code website. But if I just give them the link, I don't get any data as a teacher. I don't know how they're completing it. I don't know if they've watched the videos to get the good introduction. I don't know if they have the basics behind it. So I'm going to break it into a couple different pieces. The very first section here is an intro video. And I noticed that there's a link at the top. And so all I did was copy the link, come over to Formative, and I embedded the video into my Formative. And all I did to do that was my embed feature here, and I copied the YouTube embed link from the video. Yeah, it's a great activity. And so now I know that the video is here. My students are going to watch this first, and I can actually add a question with my video. And so now it's not just watching the video. It becomes less passive. It becomes much more active for students, because now they're going to answer, okay, so what did you learn about machine learning? Before we get to the fun piece, before we get to the really exciting game piece, what is it that you're learning about machine learning from this video? Because that's really the computer science aspect of this Hour of Code week, or computer science week, right? So one way to kind of make those activities a little bit more active and kind of help highlight the computer science focus for your students, or the content focus for your students, is to break it into these parts, pull the videos into Formative, add them here, and add questions. Okay. So after my students have completed the video, then they can actually get to work on this artificial intelligence thing, on this actual AI activity. So I've got the link here for my students to click on. And then I've also got another question at the end, again, to check in after they've finished the activity. And I could add as many questions as I wanted to into this content block. But now I've taken an activity that my students may have just clicked on, worked on for a little bit, and then clicked off of, and made it a much more intentional learning opportunity for my students. This is a text block. If you haven't played around with that content option, there's a lot of power in this and a lot of flexibility. So within my text box here, I can type. If I highlight my text, I also get bold. I can get title height. I got numbers, colors, anything and everything I want to be able to add emphasis, or kind of tweak the text to be what I want it to be. You'll also see I have a plus sign here, which means I can add any of these features into this text box. All right, so this is a great place. Again, I just have the link here, but feel free to jazz it up for your students. Give them some more directions, give them some more supports if they're younger students. There's a lot of opportunities here to be able to build in any kind of supports or scaffolds to help your students succeed with this. Okay, so this first example is definitely much more computer science focused. And so for all those teachers who are like, I want to do this with my students, but I have to cover content. I have to cover the curriculum that is not a computer science curriculum. There's plenty of things on this website and on this whole computer science week that you can do with your students. I'm going to show you one of those right now. So one of the activities in Hour of Code is about homophones. So in this case, I've built a content block here. So my students in Formative would see this entirely as one section. So the image here that represents homophones and talks through a couple of different examples, what the definition is, and there's pictures to go along with them. This is a great reference and starting point for my students. I've got a little definition here on the right for text blocks. And then I've also got the link here for my students. You'll notice I have a check at the end here, where students would have to write 2 sentences that showcases the different meanings of the words jeans and jeans, so that I've got kind of that grounding activity, that support here in this picture. I've got the activity from Hour of Code, and then I've got a check to see how my students did. You'll notice at the bottom, I've also got my standards tagged here. And this is really kind of one of those extra bonuses of doing these activities in Formative, is now I can still track student progress on this standard in Formative while we're doing an activity that's relevant and maybe a little bit different than they normally would look at homophones. All right. And you could do a whole mini lesson ahead of this too. This would be another way for you to use a whole mini lesson with your students. But then this link takes them directly to this activity with a play now button that keeps it super simple and easy for them to find. And you can go through, or they can work through this activity on their own. What you'll also see on a lot of these coding activities and on these Hour of Code activities is a teacher guide and standards that are already linked and ready for you to go. So if you're not quite sure whether something fits, like this is a pretty clear one that it fits with language arts standards for my students. If you come into Hour of Code and search for, let's go with language arts. Let me find one of these here. Most of these will have a teacher notes section as well. And if you click on the teacher notes, you'll get some more examples, materials, lesson pieces. There's lots of great information here to help scaffold for you as well. So it's never just, oh, just go do this activity, or, oh, I don't know anything about coding, so I can't help you. There's a ton of information here and a ton of support for you and for your students to break it into smaller sections, like I've done with these 2 pieces and these 2 examples, to make it easy for you and for your students. Okay. And there is always connections to not just math or not just science. Yep. So yes, Christine, in this particular case, the only answer that they're giving on this question is going to be the only thing tracked for the standard. And if I wanted to build in more questions here, I absolutely could. I could build out an entire formative that's designed around kind of that mini lesson of let's learn about homophones first together. There could be more matching activities, more kind of pre-work activities for my students. Then they can go into the Hour of Code homophones activity, let them do a little independent practice there. And then you can add in an exit ticket at the end for them, like this jeans and jeans question. And so you could track their progress through the whole formative. And using that, you can see their progress on that standard while also including something like an Hour of Code activity for them as part of that practice. And so these first 2 are a little bit more, is actually a really good transition. So thank you for bringing this up, Christine. These first 2 examples are a little bit more segmented. They're not quite as comprehensive for a lesson. But what I want to show you now is how you can set this up, because one of our other features in Formative is teacher pace mode. And if you haven't played around with teacher pace mode, I highly encourage you to do this. I'm going to show you how to set up an activity specifically for a teacher pace mode with an Hour of Code activity. So here, this Quotable beach cleanup piece is an activity that can be scaffolded for several different age groups. If I was teaching this to my students, I'd want to do the introduction with them together. We'd watch it, we'd talk through kind of what's coming up, what questions they have, and then I want to do a check with them. Are they ready to start? Are there students that feel like they just need a little bit of support, or are there students that I definitely need to go check in with and make sure that they're ready to get going? So just a quick entrance ticket here. The next piece could be the actual Quotable game. So I've got this link here that's ready to go for my students. They click on it, they go into it, and they start working. So now this is their independent practice time. But I know because they're informative here, they're not going to other places. They're not clicking through a bunch of different things to get where they need to go. everything is right here for them. Awesome. I then have another free response question type here on the right-hand side, talking about why ocean life is so important. So really kind of connecting back to those science standards and really understanding where those fit into an activity like this. So connecting to content that we're teaching and that we're working on in class and this computer science week and computer science education. I have used free response questions here throughout this formative for one really important reason. When I flip over to student pace mode or to the student view here, you'll notice students have the opportunity to use this plus sign. The free response questions are the only places within formative that let students have these options. So if you have a student that is more comfortable responding by speaking, they have the option here. In the same question, a student also has an option to record a video of themselves. So maybe they're really excited about what they learned and they are really passionate about it, want to show you in a video. This one question type will cover all of those responses. So super simple for you as a teacher, but gives your students a ton of flexibility. And in an activity like this, where some may be more comfortable typing it out or taking a picture and showing you what they learned, there's lots of options here for your students. I am going to jump over to the Hour of Code website because I do want to show you with this particular, a couple other things on this website that are really useful. You have a couple of ways to search here. You can use by activity type. So if you want to go through an entire lesson plan with your students, that's an option too. So you can look through here and it'll go kind of step by step with your students and with what they need. Okay, so for this one, I just clicked through it. You're going to go to, this one would be a quilt, Hour of Code quilt. So you've got your directions, you've got other ones here that are showing up, and you can jump into the projects, and your students' projects would be here as well. Some of them have a lot more support than others, so definitely take a look through and see which ones work for you. All right, and I highly encourage you to take a look through here. Like I said, there's a lot of ways to filter out things that are too much for your students or too little for your students. The comfortable is somewhat misleading. The comfortable definitely seems to fall in the I've had computer science experience before and maybe taken a class or so. That's definitely where the comfortable piece is, but there are so many options in the beginner space that you can then add into formative in the way that I showed in multiple ways here, and use formative to help continue to track those standards, continue to make it relevant for the standards and the mastery that you need to see with your students, while also combining something as valuable as computer science experience with your students. All right. I do want to show you, since we do have a little bit of extra time, the formative you all are going to be getting. So this is the formative that you're going to get a copy code of. And the idea behind this is you're going to help your students code a word problem. All right. And the idea is they're going to create a visual animation that helps support mathematical thinking for a word problem that they write. Okay. It is, most of the standards that are tagged in this are in elementary math, but this can be adjusted so easily for so many different grade levels and so many different math courses. All right. It is very wide open. So if you teach something other than, middle school or elementary school, I don't want you to be afraid to use this. It is pretty much ready to go for you. So some small tweaks would make it really simple. The idea is that students will work through each section, one section at a time. So in this example, in this first section, you have students watching this scratch animation and then writing the word problem that shows or that matches what's being seen. So this is their example. This is what they're trying to replicate within Scratch, is this math problem that's shown here with the balloons popping, they're writing out what that word problem is and working through those steps. So they're going to write their own word problem. And once they've written their own word problem, they're going to go play around in Scratch. So this is where we kind of get that math to computer science crossover here. So up here, our standards are squarely in the math category. And then in this section, we start to move into the computer science standards. And so you get both the computational thinking and the math standards all in one activity. Scratch is a free program for your students. They do not need to pay for anything on that website. They can create an account without an email address. So there's plenty of options to use there. It's not like your students have to create another email account there in order for them to work. These next couple activities walk them through different parts of Scratch and help kind of guide their thinking and playing and exploring. And then they actually get to create their animation. So they write a word problem, can be based on any type of math or mathematical thinking. And then they plan out what kind of background are you going to use? What kind of sprites are you going to use? How are you going to actually represent your math problem? Mine was subtraction, or that example was subtraction. That's where you get the popping balloons. So how are you going to represent the math in your problem? So kind of really helping them organize their thoughts. And then they go ahead and build their animation in Scratch and share the link with you, or a video of their animation with you in this free response question. There's also a reflection at the bottom for them, just picking at least one question. Please feel free to adjust these for yourself and your students. I just put a couple here to help guide your thinking. But I did just want to give a quick overview of this, and I will grab the copy code for you now so that you all can use this with your students. And you can make any changes you'd like to this formative. It's not going to change the original. You all are getting a copy. So that is there for you. If you'd like to use it with your students, you're welcome to it. And with that, we are going to start to wrap up. We have about 7 minutes left for questions. So please feel free to throw them in the chat if you have them. But while you're typing out those last minute questions, there's a few places I want to point your attention. The question mark in your account is a great space for you to learn from our help center, from our training center. All of those places have great resources that are short, sweet, and to the point, and really can help support your formative knowledge. And if you ever need anything, you can always contact us with this blue button here. We have folks staffing our support desk 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Friday. So you can always get in contact with us. We're here to help. And that is all I had for you today. Well, if there's no other questions, have a great night, everybody, or a great day if you're just starting. And we'll see you soon.